Now, when it comes to graphic design, there's one tool that's going to be used again and again, and that is the text tool. So let's understand the text tool in detail. We know that the tool over here looks like this. The T character over here is basically the icon for the text tool. When you click on this, there are a couple of types of tools which are available over here. The first is the horizontal type. The second is vertical. Then there's vertical type mask and horizontal type mask. Let's understand one and see the others, which are going to be pretty easy. So when I click on the first text type tool, which is the horizontal tool, I can see that there is an icon change over here. And with this, I can click at any point in the canvas and it lets me add a text on this canvas. Now looking at the options bar, the first option that's available over here is basically to toggle the text orientation. You can keep the text orientation either horizontal, or you can click on it and change it to vertical. The next options are for font and the font type. So I've selected Monster Art over here. You can click and drop down and you can select any font over here. And from that font, if there are various types available, you can select the variations of the type from this particular panel. Now Monster Art in this case has thin, thin italic, light, extra light, couple of other options over here, and all of those will change how the font is defined. Now that depends on the font type itself, which is installed into your system. The next option is to change the size of the font. There are a couple of variations, but these are not limited. You can always type in this box and add a size that's probably not available over here as well. And not just that, you can also do this with decimals, and that still works. Now the next thing is aliasing. Now this is something that you'll probably not use a lot unless you are designing specifically for different video cards, and I'll probably ask you to stay away from getting complicated information from this. The next thing is for the alignment. Now very similar to alignment that we have seen in any of the softwares, there are three pre-default options, which are left align, center text, and right align. And then there is the text color. I can choose the color of the text using this. And then there is something for the type warping. Now type warping is something that we'll see in detail. And that's largely about the settings that you can see from the options bar. There are a couple of more settings available in the panel. So if I click on the character panel over here, or if it's not visible for you, you can always open that up from the window and you can click on character, you open the character panel. Now when I do that, there are a couple of settings which are repeated over here, which is the font and the font type, the font size, and then a couple of new features that we did not see up in the options bar. Now these are what we'll see in detail. There are few things over here, and let's go through all of them. The first one over here is called leading. Now leading is basically the space between two different lines in the text. So if I have a text that looks something like this, the leading for which is automatic. If I change the leading for this, it will have a slightly increased size between the two lines. Now this is because the leading over here is at 36 points. I can select both of these lines and decrease or increase the leading. So when I change the leading, the distance of the second line from the first line keeps on changing. So if you can see that, increasing the number basically increases the distance of the second line from the first one. So that's leading. Then the next option is something called kerning. Now kerning by default is the distance between two characters. With something with no kerning or the kerning set at default value, the distance between two characters is equidistant, is normal. But when I change the kerning to a specific number between two characters, when I keep the cursor over here and change the kerning to, let's say, minus 200, the distance between those two characters reduces. Now do notice I am not selecting any of these characters or changing the number. I am only keeping the cursor between two characters and reducing it. Just like reducing it, I can also increase it to increase the distance between just those two characters. So that's kerning. Now moving on, the next option over here is called tracking. Now tracking is basically the distance between all characters in a text. So if a normal text looks like this, where the letters are at equal distance from the previous ones and the next one, an increased tracking will look something like this. Now over here, I have increased the tracking to 100 points. I can set it to 0, which is basically the default value, and I can keep on increasing it. Let's say if I put it at 200, you'll see the distance between the characters keep on increasing. So that is basically tracking. Now the next set of options over here is for scaling. There are two different types of scale that we can do. So for that, let me add a new text, set tracking to 0. And over here, I can see that with this 100% and 100% on the vertical and the horizontal side, I can increase the vertical to make the text appear longer, something like that. And then I can change it horizontally to make it thicker or make it slightly fatter. If I decrease the size to 100% in the vertical dimensions, you can see how making the horizontal scaling basically just extends the text horizontally. And the last option that we can see over here is baseline shift. That is basically the distance of the text from the baseline where the text has been set. So if I increase that, the text will move upwards, and I can decrease that to make the text move downwards. The couple of other options that we can see over here is the color. We've already seen how the color works. And then there are a few advanced features. There is the Fox bold, the Fox italics. There is something for all caps, small caps, and superscript, subscript, underline, and strike through. If you have not used any of these earlier, let me just quickly show you how these work. Fox bold is basically making any text, any font bold if it does not have a font face for the bold one. Basically makes all the characters slightly thicker. Similarly, Fox italics, this makes all the text slightly slanted. If I click on all caps, it will change all the characters in the text layer to capital letters. And similarly, for small caps, it will change all the characters but the first ones in every word to the capital letter but in smaller size. Something like that. Now with superscript or subscript, I can change the part of this, and I can call for a specific need as and when necessary. And with this, I can also underline a particular part or strike through a segment of the text layer that I do have. So that's basically the kind of varieties that we do have for the text settings in Photoshop. Now, before we move on to text warping, let's quickly understand what's the difference between the horizontal type tool and vertical type tool. The only difference over here being the text is written instead of horizontally, the text will be written vertically while all the other settings remain same. You will not see any other difference. Let's go back to horizontal type tool and now understand text warping. Now, basically warped text is nothing but different variations of text that can be written. Now, if I have all of the default settings over here, let's see what are the different options for text warping. Now, when I warp text, there are multiple styles which are defined by Photoshop. There are few layers over here, and let's see all of them in detail. Now, with each one of these, there are 4 options, which is either horizontal or vertical. Then the percentage of bend, distortion in horizontal, and distortion in vertical. When I change the bend, that basically shows what sort of impact will the warping have on the text. I can go from -100% to a positive 100% and see how the text changes. We can also do this distortion that basically distorts the warping in a particular dimension. Now, when I do this for horizontal distortion, I can see how the horizontal distortion happens on the text because of the left and the right side. And similarly, if I do this for the vertical one, you'll see how the warping also distorts for the negative and the positive distortions. Now, let's quickly go through all of the options which are there for warping. If I turn off all the other layers, and let me show you the options which are available. There are a total of 16 options available in Photoshop for warping text, but these are of course text presets that have been defined by Photoshop. You can always do your own warping by using the transform tool. So the 15 options are arc, arc lower, arc upper, arch, bulge, shell, shell upper and shell lower, flag, wave, fish, rise, fisheye, inflate, squeeze and twist. Now it's not easy to understand these words, and so that's why I have something done already. So you can see how the different types of warping options are available and what's the effect of all of these on the text. There are a few which are very easy to understand. You can see how arc, bulge work. There's something for flag and a wave, fish, rise. You can see fish eye and an inflate, squeeze and twist. Now with all of these text, I have just put the default settings. You can of course select any one of them and change the default settings for the warping. So with this, if I do increase the bend, you can see how the lower end or the right end of this gets decreased and the left end gets increased in size. You can also change the distortion just to see the difference over here. And that's basically said everything about the text layer. You've seen the text layers over here with the horizontal type and the vertical type. Now with the vertical type mask and the horizontal type mask, the options are very similar. Just the difference being it creates a mask that can be used to create a selection. So if I have a new text layer over here for an horizontal type mask tool, it ends up creating a text layer that, if set, basically creates a selection. Now with this, I can either use it to mask, create a path, or create a cutout from that selection. This can be done in both ways for a horizontal and a vertical type, and that's how you will use any of these text tools. And that's about it for everything about the text tool.